Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Attention Retention. I'm Jackie McManus, CEO and founder of KJ Media. We're a recruitment advertising agency specializing in talent attraction, optimizing hiring processes, and driving efficiency to help grow your workforce in the trucking industry. And on this show, our podcast, Attention Retention, we dive into the world of recruitment, retention, and recognition by interviewing industry leaders and experts as we unpack the strategies, the challenges, successes surrounding these three critical aspects of workforce management. And this week, I am so excited to be joined by Joel Busse, driver, recruiting, and marketing manager at Millis Transfer. Joel, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here, Jackie.
Yeah, and you really bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Starting your journey in the industry with your CDL back in the 1990 and actively still holding it with over 3 decades of experience in the trucking industry and a really deep understanding being with Millis for a majority of that time frame. Are you uniquely positioned to shed light on your retention strategies and dedication that the team has to driver satisfaction, retention, and safety? And Millis Transfer has 85 years of experience and history in the space and boasting a fleet of about 650 trucks and a real commitment to prioritizing the driver well-being and safety. Joel, would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself and how you became where you are at Millis Transfer.
Thanks, Jackie. I started commercially driving a truck since 1990. Got my CDL then and drove over the road for several years and all over the country, Canada, all over the great country of ours, and it's an interesting lifestyle for sure. It's a great lifestyle. It can be very enjoyable. And, I understand the challenges that the drivers do face out there every day. And it's a tough world, but it can be rewarding. And I think Millis Transfer is a great place for drivers to achieve those financial goals here and do it safely.
Yeah, and you have a unique position, having your CDL since 1990, still actively holding it. I'd love to dive into the first question, which is recruitment. And I say you have a unique advantage, I want to say, because you understand what it's like to be out on the road, day after day or week after week, by yourself or working for a company. And I would love to know your input on what you find to be more of the successful approaches to attracting and recruiting drivers in today's market.
Well, in the recruiting world, everybody talks about speed to hire and, get them in to your next orientation and things like that. And I'm not opposed to that as far as the recruiting standard goes, but I do want our recruiters to get a relationship with the drivers before they just sign them up for the next class or sign them up for the next, make sure that they're a good fit for us before we get them in orientation, finding out that, this driver has these wants and needs, and finding out that, maybe Millis isn't a good fit for them because of what they're looking for. And we need to find that out in the recruiting process. And it's not an instant process like some folks would like it to be. We maybe go a little bit slower on some of these things, but I think our recruiters do a great job with making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and make sure that the drivers are fully aware of what to expect before they get to that orientation. Not, they never told me this, or I forgot to ask this question, and find out that I made a bad decision. We don't want that to happen after orientation has already started.
That's such a great point, and especially the phrase, speed to hire. That's a common phrase in our industry and across the board. And there was, I feel like in a way COVID really shifted that, going from 2018, 2019 through the pandemic, to companies being forced to be more technology driven, being online, communicating a little bit faster, but it also at the same time allowed companies to look at their overall process. How are they talking to the drivers? What's the messaging that they're actually saying to the drivers? Um, are they really, matching the driver to the carrier in the best opportunity that works for the driver? I always say, not every company is for every driver. And typically, if recruiters don't have that upfront, honest conversation from the beginning, we know what happens. Less than 90 days out. So, I mean, how do you coach your team to overcome these common challenges that are in the recruiting landscape in sourcing and attracting qualified candidates?
Well, the biggest thing is we want them to listen to the driver, not just give them their spiel. Here's a script.
Right.
Give them the rundown on everything. Make sure you listen, ask questions, listen to their answers. And if their answers set off any kind of an alert or a red flag in their mind, maybe they need to slow things down a little bit and make sure the driver's aware how things are here versus maybe what they were hoping that things would be.
I think that's the big word there is listen, right? And that's a soft skill. That's a soft skill in training your recruiters to really pause, listen, and to understand your drivers. There's so many opportunities, let's just say that, out there for drivers in today's market. How does your company go about differentiating itself with this competitive landscape?
It's tough. You see one company and they all pretty much have the same shtick, as it were. Great family environment, great equipment, good home time, great benefits. There's probably not that many companies that we can say that we're head and shoulders above.
Yep.
As far as comparing ourselves to carriers comparable to us, we just try to do a better job on the everyday things, keeping the drivers happy. That's our staff here, the driver managers, the payroll people here at in our company are long-term employees. They're not, we're not a fly-by-night company. We've been doing this a long time, and our driver managers and operations folks, and they've all been here many, many years. And that's how we try to separate ourselves from some of the other carriers to set ourselves above them, as it were, to make ourselves different. But it's a difficult thing because they hear this from every other carrier they talk to as well. So it's just part of our industry.
It's so part of our industry, and you're right. The competitive landscape from one company to the next pays similar, benefits are somewhat similar, right? Especially if it's the same type of position, OTR, or if it's flatbed. And so on the advertising end, which is where, I sit, it's very much how do we extract those soft values from the trucking company on why drivers are staying there. What's the average retention rate? How do we get that message out to new drivers so it's not the typical black and white job description? And when they're maybe looking for a new position, or if they're scrolling on social media, there's something that pops out that's a little bit more unique than the typical advertisement that you see out there. And I think that's spot on, is that every company, it's similar in a way. But one thing that really was exciting initially talking to you is the focus that you have on retention. And I have to imagine the career that you've had as starting your career as a professional truck driver really plays a big role in that. So I want to jump over to retention and get your viewpoint on what you found to be more successful methods in retaining your workforce over the last couple of decades? And how's that evolved too?
The evolution of the trucking industry since I started has changed dramatically. It's not the pay phones. It's not the waiting till you get to your next stop to call in to find out what you're doing next. Everybody's got apps on their phones these days. They know instantaneously what they're doing next. The key thing that in this day and age is communication. If you're not communicating extensively with the driver or they're not communicating with you, you're going to have issues. So it's a two-way street, but we do want to communicate with the drivers, finding out beforehand if they're having any difficulties or any issues, and addressing those issues before they get out of hand or before they get frustrated and decide to move on. And if we can get ahead of that before that happens, find out what the issues are, address those issues, we will do everything we can in our power to make those changes. And if it's something that we can't change, then we made every attempt. It's not like, well, we don't know what happened. They just left. We know that we made every attempt, and sometimes it just happens. In this industry, it does happen fairly regularly, but we do try to make every attempt to make sure that we have done everything we could in our power to make the driver happy here. And there's a lot more to it than just that, but
Sure.
But communication is a big thing, and reaching out to them at set intervals, so that the drivers know that, hey, I know I'm going to get a call after 30 days of starting here from my recruiter, or 60 days down the road from my recruiter, finding how things are going, and also surveys, and there's just so many ways that we can communicate with the driver, social media and things like that we need to use, and we do use, and along with also the telematics and the trucks and all those items.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this with the set intervals. Is that something that's discussed with the driver in the beginning? Your recruiter is going to be contacting you every X amount of days, whatever that magic number is, and expect to hear from us so that their expectations are met immediately?
Yeah, in orientation, we try to mention that, hey, your recruiter, and we also try in orientation to have the recruiters join us in these orientation meetings and introduce themselves. They can put a face to the name and all that, and keep developing that relationship. But sometimes we do fail to mention that. But at that first phone call, the recruiter calls them after 30 days or whatever the time frame is. They'll mention at that point that, hey, we'll give you another call in another 30 days or 60 days or whatever time period. And we also mentioned to the driver, don't hesitate to call us, obviously, if you're having any issues. It's a two-way street. Communicate with us. If anything pops up that we need to be made aware of, please let us know right away.
Yeah, and I love that the recruiters are still part in that contact with the driver. And I think that part is really important as you're focusing on retention. Typically, there's a handoff, right? They have that communication with the recruiter. They go through onboarding, and then they're right over to ops, dispatch specifically. But in a way, drivers had their first phone call, their first conversation with these recruiters. And we advise a lot of our clients, and more clients are doing this, is having the recruiters check in with the drivers too, because they develop that bond, that really special bond from the beginning. And that's hard to form over time. And so if they have that point of contact, obviously there's a million ways you want to do it right and wrong, so you're not inundating the recruiter. But we've definitely found having that communication come from the recruiter to the driver directly helps quite a bit versus just the complete handoff.
Oh, absolutely. They gain that relationship. They find out about their family situations. They find out about their,
Exactly.
their hobbies and things like that. What do they like to do on their home time, and they get that one-on-one relationship. And it's not as soon as they get in the orientation that they never hear from them again. So it's good for both parties involved. It's good for the drivers, and it's good for the recruiters to maintain that, so that when they talk to somebody else, they know that, hey, this driver had this issue
Right.
at one point. Maybe we could get ahead of that before it becomes another issue for another driver.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm curious on your take on this question I have with, again, your experience. you know, historically, we are an industry that has extremely high turnover, right? It's us, it's hospitality, it's the nursing industry, medical industry, and the average is north of 70% up to 90. I've come across folks that are well over 100. You know, as a driver that's been in the industry for many years, and now where you sit as a manager, what do you think is some of the primary reasons behind this, and how do we address these challenges as an industry?
Well, drivers, generally, at least how I was, you have your bad days and your good days. Hopefully the good days are more than the bads, and but all it takes some days is just having that one bad moment, that one extra thing, that just the straw that broke the camel's back, or whatever. And you just, I've had it, and I need to get out of here, and I need to go somewhere else. And it's so easy for a driver to find somewhere else. There's a lot of good companies out there. So just that one bad thing can make a driver start filling out an app, and that app doesn't go to one company, goes to 20 companies or more, and then they get flooded with these emails and texts and phone calls, and they get wooed immediately. It's like, hey, we've got this, we've got that, and we can make it work for you. And how does next week look? And we can get you get your rental car. We'll get you here to our next orientation. And it doesn't have to be where that driver lives. As a driver, they're not tied to that geographical location. They can work anywhere in the country no matter where they live. So they're, it's not like they have to work within an hour of their house or anything like that. They can work anywhere in the country for any company out there.
Yeah.
For the most part. So it's an industry that doesn't have any restrictions, mainly other than safety factors and job histories and those things that we all look at. But if you've got a good work history, you are guaranteed a job tomorrow, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the name of the game. And it's interesting. I was on I'm a guest on Sirius XM Road Dog Trucking Channel 146, the Tim Wrigley Show. I mean, I was on this morning, and I've been on the show now, Joel, for about 8 years, and I love being on because I get to talk to drivers, and I talk to drivers, and my biggest question is, what maybe attracted you to a certain company? Was it a certain platform, again, because we're in the marketing space? Was it word of mouth through marketing, or how are you attracted? But secondly, why, what's keeping you out of your current company? And I had a caller call in today, Mighty Joe, and he had a really interesting story, I thought. And it ties back to what you were mentioning earlier. He was with a company for about 4 to 5 years. He had a really great relationship. The communication from recruiting to dispatch went seamlessly. Everything that the recruiter said was correct in orientation, which then, bled into his day-to-day life with the dispatch team. And what happened is that there was a change in dispatchers, and they just didn't jive. Let's just say that. And so I asked him, I said, well, was there any exit interview of sorts? And he said, kind of, but barely was the answer. And, what my thought is like, that's a missed opportunity because, in essence, the trucking company may not know that information of why that driver specifically left, who was there for 3 to 4 years and was planning to really be a lifer because of a personnel. And you mentioned surveys earlier, and getting that feedback to drivers. It's so critical because it only allows companies to grow and learn and address the issues head on, and maybe see, okay, there's a personality match. Well, ends up, he found out kind of a couple years later, it wasn't just him. And so I am curious if that company even knows, right? Or even if that person is still there. But I just found that interesting because I share this with you because there are so many ways to get feedback and get those surveys from drivers and make those internal changes and figure that out. that, in a way, they may have a better retention rate in the long run if they kind of nipped it in the butt in the beginning.
Yeah, those surveys, when we talk about them in our orientation, we tell drivers, hey, you're going to get a survey from the company that we use for applicant tracking. Probably know what it is, but anyway, we tell them to don't don't gloss it up. Don't try to make us happy with these surveys results. Yeah, if you're happy and don't have any issues, great. Let us know that. But if you're having any issues, that's what we really want to know about, because if you're having issues, we need to know about it so we can get ahead of it. If you're having issues with your driver manager, we can find you a different driver manager. If you're having issues with mechanical issues, maintenance issues, we can get with our maintenance team and find out what's going on there or whatever before you get to that frustration point and losing that 4 to 5 year time frame. And that's a valuable asset in these days, to have that in your pocket, that you've got 5 years with this company, and that is extremely valuable to keep that.
It truly is, and there's so many ways to go about getting that information, getting those surveys, whether it's through an ATS platform, a third party. There's companies out there that make phone calls as a third party, so the driver could be a little bit more transparent, because there is always that fear that, sometimes folks get a little nervous of expressing their truth and what may come of that. But, what we found really is drivers expressing, the good, the bad, the ugly is what I say always. And companies addressing it, whether they can make a change immediately, depending, let's say it's an issue with the shipper and detention times, that takes it's not an overnight switch sometimes. It takes consistent communication between the sales and the shipper's end. But when a driver feels valued and heard, and like their company is going to try to control the controllables that they can, that just will, no matter what, spike up retention and keep it where it should be.
Yeah, listening to the drivers is very, very important. Even with our social media platform on our there, if somebody mentions something, hey, the showers at this location, that one of our drop yards or terminals, they weren't cleaned over the weekend. That's stuff we need to know about. It's not acceptable, and we need to address that. And, if nobody says anything, then we don't find out about that. We don't make changes, and status quo goes on. And it's like, well, they don't care about the drivers. Well, you gotta let your company know that there's an issue here.
You don't know what you don't know. That's
Exactly.
And that's the old saying that still stands true. I want to jump over to recognition, and I'm excited to talk about this with you. You guys have a great social media presence, recognizing drivers. In what ways, what milestones and achievements within your driving team, what do you guys recognize to cultivate that appreciation?
Honestly, I'd like to see us do a little bit more on that end. Currently, basically, we recognize our drivers that have reached the 1,000,000-mile goals of safe driving. Driving 1,000,000 miles,
Incredible.
and a typical driver takes about 8 years or more. And to do that safely, that is a fantastic achievement. And obviously, we recognize those individuals. But what about the driver that drove all year safely? They should get recognized as well. Each year of safe driving should be noticed and rewarded as well. Yes, those 1,000,000-mile achievements are fantastic, and they are huge milestones. But every day that a driver does safe is a good thing. But recognizing those extra goals and timeline achievements, those are big ones. But I'd like us to here in my organization, I'd like to see us do a little bit more. But that's where we're at right now, is the 1,000,000-mile achievements.
Well, that's phenomenal that you have drivers that have hit those tremendous goals. I mean, that is no easy task by any means. And when I think of recognition, there are obviously monetary things that can be tied to that. And in this climate, it's a little difficult to do that with where we're at economically. But I always find just the power of a thank you. and knowing a driver by their name and learning about their family and really recognizing them as a human goes a long way. And I always say the power of those two words, thank you, really resonates with drivers because majority of the day it's challenging for them. They're in inclement weather. People, do not know or are not really have much grace with drivers when they're driving on the highway or down I-10. They're, kind of put on the back burner. And so when the company can acknowledge a driver and say, hey, thank you so much, great work, or just give them a phone call to say that they appreciate them versus just calling them to maybe scold them, it does go a long way. So, when I think about recognition, it's not only monetary, but it's also what does that communication look like, through and through, which your team is doing because you have such a focus on retaining your drivers.
Right. There's the driver appreciation week in
Yep.
September. And, obviously we do extra things during that week, but we also do things during the year. Like next week, I'll be going to Eden, North Carolina for a driver appreciation event there. And
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's, we try to spread them out throughout the year, not just one week of the year. And it's try to do that as much as we can, but that's still not enough. The drivers that are out there driving, doing the work, how many of them are we going to see at this one location? Probably not as many as we would love to. We would love to see every driver there, but they're out there working. We hope that they get a moment to stop by if they're in the area, and so we can show them our gratitude by giving them a good meal and things like that. But like you said, every day is a driver appreciation day. In at least it should be. It's a challenging world, and every day the driver does face those challenges successfully. It's a good day, and we thank the drivers for that.
And what do you guys do on your driver appreciation event down in the terminal?
Eden, North Carolina next week. We will be giving our drivers a nice mug. I don't have the mug in front of me here.
Let's see the mug. Let's see the swag.
Hang on. I got it right here. Hang on. I should have been prepared, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a nice mug here. It's not.
Oh, that's really nice. That's a like one of those that keeps the drink cold or hot, whichever temperature you want. Yeah. And the red.
It's something small,
Yeah.
I wish we could do more.
Give them some food, right? Have a good time.
Yes, we'll feed them and do breakfast and lunch and talk to them, see how they're doing, and get that feedback. We'll have a couple of other folks from the operations team out there as well to find out how everybody's doing and keep everybody.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's, it's something through the core philosophies of your company is that every day is a driver appreciation day. And that really shows in how you've communicated that and focused on retention. And, I have a question. I have two final questions for you. What advice would you give to a recruiter or a new recruiter entering the industry, or maybe they've been in the industry for about a year or two, or they were a driver themselves and becoming a recruiter? What advice would you give to someone that is coming into the industry on how to, over communicate, if you will, and keep that transparency throughout the conversation? Because sometimes that could be a challenge.
Yeah, the challenge that the recruiters face these days is knowing what way the driver likes to communicate. Not all drivers like phone calls. Not every driver likes to have that call at 4:00 in the afternoon from a recruiter saying, hey, how's it going? This is so-and-so at, XYZ company, and, I see you're looking for a job. Some of them like that text or email and, hey, can you just send me what you're offering and I'll take a look at it. And, I've had a long day and I just don't have a lot of time to spend on this call, but also the ones that do want that phone call, knowing that as well, it's a balancing act, as it were. And for the recruiters to gain that relationship with those individuals and making sure that they're putting that driver in a seat that the driver should be in, not what the recruiter thinks the driver should be in.
That's key. And, speaking of the communication, we're essentially recruiters now, and all of us, we're dealing with 4 or 5 different generations in the workforce, the baby boomers all the way down to Gen Z. And as we know, technology has completely transformed in the last 30 years, and how people communicate has completely transformed. So you'll see the younger generation, they're able to submit an application with their eyes closed practically, where maybe the baby boomer wants to just have an in-depth conversation to get to know them. Also, as well, they have more experience. They know what they're looking for, and so understanding that communication, I think that's a really, really great point for future recruiters to take in mind as they're looking at their landscape. And also, when's the best time to contact the driver? That's a question we ask on our, our client's behalf when we're advertising, is when's the best time to contact you? Because in our world, it's running 24/7. So we're not too sure when the driver is currently working. It may be between 8 to 5. Right. So if you call them, they're not going to answer because they're driving or they're busy working for the other company. But figuring out when they can contact, and also what's the best method? Is it phone? Is it SMS? I always advise ask those questions up front so you understand, and then this way you don't miss the disconnect too much. And the driver calls back and the recruiter is not available, or it's difficult, especially now the amount of spam we get these days on the telephones. You don't know who's calling you, so
everybody screens their calls. You
Yeah.
leave a voicemail and wait. Hopefully they get back to you. But also, like you talked about the generations of drivers out there and the older generation and whatever. They don't always go to a website to fill out an application. They saw your number on the back of a truck and say, hey, I'm just giving you a call. What do you got to offer? And the recruiter will go on their computer and say, I don't see your app. Can you go to our website and fill out an app? Find out what they're looking for before you just push them off to a website to fill out a generic app. And, are you looking for a van company? Are you looking to flatbed? Are you looking to team? Those kind of things. Are you looking for home daily? What are you looking for before we just push you off to a website to fill out an application? Find out that first.
Find out more about the driver. And a big, there's some, folks we've come across in the industry where they only call as a recruiter full applications. And I can understand it from that seat too, especially with, high volume. But there's different ways to kind of work it where you can figure out, all right, well, these drivers will prefer a phone call. And these are the questions we're going to ask them up front. So really having that conversation, because there's so many ways now to get an influx of information from the drivers, keeping that pretty consistent and understanding what the needs are for them so that you can at least connect to see if it's a good opportunity for both of you guys.
Absolutely.
All right. We got my final question for you, Joel. What would you say is one of the most important lessons you've learned over the last couple decades in your career and your seat at Millis?
Boy, that's an excellent question. In my role here, the most important thing is to listen. Don't make snap decisions. Find out the whole story. Somebody in operations will come back and say, "Why did you hire this driver? They keep having this issue." Okay, hold on now. Let's wait now. Was this explained to them properly? Did we miss something on our end? We need to work on getting those things fixed before we make a decision based upon one bad experience from a driver manager or operations perspective. Now, as a driver, let's reverse the roles. Again, we don't want them to make a snap decision based upon one bad action,
Right.
a driver manager sending you a nasty email or nasty message on their telecommunication device or whatever it is. And, we all need to understand that some people have a bad day and you have a bad day, and these things do happen. Don't base any decisions on one action. If you see a trend, that's fair. But communicate with us. Hey, I'm seeing these things happening. That's the reason I'm looking out other locations. But don't put any reactions on one particular event. Goes for both driver managers, and operations folks, and for drivers. You had one bad day. That's trucking, as they say. It's things
Sure
happen
is.
that are out of nobody can control the weather. Nobody can control a tire blowout, traffic, things like that. The receiver yelling at you because you didn't back in the dock perfectly straight or within a amount of timeline that they thought it would take. And these things happen in the trucking world, and don't let one bad day or bad thing make a decision that could affect your whole life.
That's a great point, and words of wisdom I will certainly hang on to is to listen and to get the full story. It's so easy to make a quick judge and decision, but that could blow a relationship, or it could blow a department. And so really looking at the full picture, being patient, understanding, and knowing that 99.9% of people out there want to do the right thing. They want to do well. They want to do the good thing. And sometimes there's just different steps involved for each person. So understanding each individual, having that compassion and really focusing on that relationship definitely is a reason that your company has, increasingly impressive retention rate across the board. And so, Joel, I've told you this, and we have our audience of almost 250,000 drivers that listen to us and are part of our community. And I would love for you to tell them why they should maybe consider a career at Millis and what type of drivers you're looking for.
As far as type of drivers, we're looking for safe drivers. That's the number one thing in our industry. Safe drivers, good work ethic is great asset. Great attitude is important to have. Why Millis Transfer? We've been around a long time as a trucking company. I think we do it the right way. Is every day going to be perfect and fantastic? No, there will be hiccups. It is just the industry we live in, and we'll work through those hiccups and to make every effort to make sure that the drivers are satisfied with staying here at Millis for long term. We've got 30 plus year drivers here at Millis Transfer. We wish every single driver would stay here until they're retired. And is that going to happen? No, but that's our goal, is to have every driver finish out their career as a truck driver here at Millis Transfer.
Well, thank you so much, Joel. And to drivers, the link to Millis Transfer's website will be in the show notes below. So please check them out. This is a company that really focuses on fostering a true relationship, having that community. Also, you get a great barbecue at a driver appreciation event and a nice coffee mug. But more importantly, they focus on it for the long term. So for all the drivers that are listening, definitely check out Millis Transfer below. And Joel, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. I had a great time. I'm not a professional speaker by any means or anything like that. I didn't grow up in the corporate world. I'm a truck driver and, not a smooth talker by any means. So, if you're looking for a good trucking company, check us out.
This is your guy
if
right
you're not
here.
a good fit for us, we understand that too.
Yeah, you'll be honest. I think that's a big message that was conveyed. And I got to say, you got to give yourself a little bit more credit. You're fantastic to have on, Joel. And thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in and listening to another episode of Attention Retention with Joel at Millis Transfer. And remember that the road to recruitment really begins with effective recruitment, thoughtful retention, and genuine recognition. Feel free to share this knowledge with your peers and industry colleagues. Your sharing can make a difference, and together we can empower the industry to thrive.